Airbnb hosts of Reddit, what is your most memorable experience with a tenant? Tangential, but the best Airbnb I ever stayed at was a smallish fifth wheel camper at the back of someone's 20-acre property, advertised as 420 friendly. We were curious and sold. $39 bucks a night. It was hooked up to plumbing and septic. She built a nice patio with a view of the duck pond and a fire ring close by, wood provided, and a 4-person table set. There was a chicken coop nearby where she asked us to please throw all non-meat food scraps, and a very fat, lazy basset hound on the property that had a bowl ready for meat scraps. I'm an animal nut. I spent some hours petting the dog and throwing blueberries at chickens. She met us there for check-in, handed us keys, asked if we minded the dog, and said if we wanted some dinner any night to shoot her a text, left us completely alone. We left her a joint and a thank you card with a $20 gift card to the pizza place in town, with the camper spotless and bleached clean. Best experience I could have hoped for. Long ramble, but I hear some horror stories and wanted to share my awesome experience as a renter. I host in Manchester, UK, usually just get people visiting for one night to go and watch the football, but recently I've had people staying for a week or so for contract work. I don't mind either, and as I share my house I make an effort to actually chat to them. Makes for a less awkward morning encounter. So this guy comes to stay, in his late 50s. I'm 30th, but it's no big deal. I listen to people for a living and can usually find some common ground and generic conversation topic. On this occasion we were experiencing a heatwave, so being British we started talking about the weather. He'd driven a couple hundred miles and I sympathized as I'd just met up with some family who'd done a similar trip. Turns out they'd traveled from the same place. Turns out he's from the same place as my dad. Turns out he played rugby with my dad when they were 16. I've literally never met another person unrelated to me from that part of the country, and here was this guy paying to stay in my spare room. He was a bloody lovely bloke and gave me a bottle of cava when he left. That got British real quick. Guest kept poking my rescue dog saying he won't bite me. He bit him. Your dog took that as a challenge. Well, not a host, but rented a room for over a month and there was an air mattress that was for rent in the living room. This is in Beijing, China by the way. Middle of the night, the man renting the air mattress knocks on my door with a thing of beer. I'm hurting from eating way too much and open the door to my bedroom. There is a complete language barrier and he motions me to follow him. He just points to the TV and says the word funny. He motions me to sit on the couch and we end up watching Top Gear with subtitles. We're both laughing at the same show and can only communicate with thumbs up. It was a good night. That's awesome. I stayed in an Airbnb once and the host asked me to leave a few days early cause his mother-in-law was coming to town and demanded to stay at his place, and you don't say no to his mother-in-law. Ended up working out though cause I got sick and was hospitalized for a few days, and the guy was nice enough to hold on to my stuff until I was feeling well enough to grab it, which also happened to be the same day as my flight out. He also refunded me for the days I was sick. I think your host might have poisoned you, mate. I rented out my apartment and the heater broke down in the middle of winter. My guest calls me to tell me and I immediately call someone to go fix it. When the guests leave, I didn't meet them since I was out of town, and I come back home. I see that all the windows and doors now have sealant around them and the frames have been caulked so there are fewer drafts. There were also a few other fixes done to the place. Apparently, my guest spoke the local language better than I do and told the repairman to fix a bunch of other crap in my apartment while he was there. It didn't cost me anything extra and she still left me a 5-star review. Not a very exciting story, but it was neat. When I stayed in a less than stellar hotel in Spain for a week, I went to the next hardware store after the first night to buy sealant silicone stuff to fix stuff in the bathroom and all around the windows. Mosquitoes found their way in. A friend of mine rents out the in-law unit in the house he and his wife share. It's a pretty sweet space. They're on a hill and the in-law unit is the lowest level, so it's kinda a basement even though it's above ground. It has a separate entrance and private bathroom and is super quiet and nice. Doesn't have a kitchen, but they've set it up with a microwave, mini fridge, and coffee maker, complete with a hostess basket of free tea and popcorn and hot chocolate. It's really like a mini hotel in a suburb neighborhood and they've had quite a few guests who have been very nice and respectful. Anyway, recently they hosted a Swiss couple who had been backpacking up and down the Pacific coast and rented my friend's Airbnb for their last couple nights before flying home. They were quiet, didn't bother my friend much, but the last night they were there, my friend and his wife heard this strange beeping coming from downstairs and the sounds of their guests scrambling around. By the time he got himself awake and pants on, though, the beeping had stopped. He shrugged and went back to bed. The next morning the Swiss left no problem, so my friend goes down to check out the room, and first off, these people had left random scraps of trash everywhere, not like junk, like receipts and bits of wrappers, etc. Probably stuff they had accumulated over the course of their trip, but instead of putting it all into the trash can, somehow it wound up all over the room. They also left a couple things that they had obviously bought for their trip and didn't want anymore. Okay, fine. But the most suspicious thing was a cooking pot, recently used and poorly cleaned, and 2, a portable propane tank, also used. My friend stared at this a moment, then, suspicion rising, he looked around. He saw that the smoke detector for the room was fine, but the carbon monoxide detector had had its batteries removed. The carbon monoxide detector. Just 2 days ago, my friend decided to put the spare bedroom on Airbnb, since her roommate was not to come back until a few days after. A 56-year-old woman showed up that night with 2 cans of beer, then proceeded to drink them both in under a couple of minutes, start yelling at people in the street and cry. She explained she had been laid off earlier this day, and was apparently not taking the news lightly. She then vomited a few times, took 3 very noisy showers between 2 AM and 8 AM, and left early with only a post-it note saying thank you, Mew Moo. I actually just stayed at an Airbnb recently and asked the owner this exact question. She didn't go into too much detail but said she has had someone who was going through NASA space training at the Houston Center, a doctor who was helping cure a specific type of cancer, and has had an Ironman triathlete. She said seeing all these successful people can sometimes make her question what she is doing with her life, and it can mess with you a bit. I'm imagining she is really hot and all those guys are the same guy with different mustaches named Barney Stinson. Had 2 rather interesting stories when I rented out my place for SXSW. First weekend, a lady from NY rented my place and posted on Twitter a reference that the downside of renting an Airbnb from a man was there was no hairdryer. Airbnb saw the tweet and had a hairdryer delivered within 30 minutes. Good marketing, I thought. The next weekend, 2 people rented my place, and one of them happened to be a fairly attractive social media marketing woman. She decided to stay an extra night and offered to take me out for drinks that night. Met up, one thing leads to another, and end up hooking up with her in my own bed that she had paid $800 to stay in that night, which I guess kind of makes me a H, and I'm totally okay with that. Had a vegan couple stay over for a night so the wife could attend a yoga spirit healing shamanism seminar in town. All that fine and they were great guests, but the kicker was when the husband asked if I'd seen the show Portlandia and then described himself and his wife like Portlandia. Except in real life, when he came back from town he offered me a piece of the special organic homemade chocolate they bought from a local shop. Must be 2 of the most self-aware people I've ever met. The kicker was when the husband asked if I'd seen the show Portlandia and then described himself and his wife like Portlandia, except in real life, when he came back from town he offered me a piece of the special organic homemade chocolate they bought from a local shop. D. Not a host, but stayed at an Airbnb in Denver last summer. When we arrived at 1 PM the host was there waiting for us. She was a young 20-something who would make you think how a person that young would have a place so nice to Airbnb. She apologized because the bedsheets comforter was still in the dryer and taking forever. She didn't know what was up with the dryer. It has been taking forever to dry stuff for a while now. I go to the dryer and find the lint trap, which was kind of hidden inside the dryer in her defense, to find a layer of lint thicker than a blanket. I like to think her mind was blown that day. And that is how dryer fires happen. One guest left cigarette burns in my carpet that I didn't notice until he was gone. After the next guest left I got an email from Airbnb saying that she complained that the room I was renting was not up to their standards because there were cigarette burns in the carpet. I sometimes host my 1-bedroom apartment on Airbnb. Good way to earn a bit extra now and then. For the most part the guests are good. They keep the place clean and no issues. However, have noticed a few red flags when dealing guests. Anyone who tries to negotiate a deal turn out to be huge pains in the ass. They will complain about everything and generally take less care, leave the place full of garbage, etc. For memorable guests, the worst was one lady who turned out to be an escort. When I went to clean the place there were condom wrappers left everywhere, suspicious stains, and somehow broke light switches in the front lock on the apartment. Never host people without verification and some prior review now. Still meet some interesting people. Hosted a couple of cool guys from France. The husband came to work at a local bistro making macarons. There was this one 19-year-old girl, let's call her Catherine, who stayed over for 4 nights. My sister had gone to my grandmother's at the time along with my dad, and my brother was at school. So it was just me and my mom. I chose to stay at home because I wanted to be antisocial, and Catherine saw that. Catherine was coming over to my city to see some friends who lived nearby, and she somehow noticed how I stayed at home playing Skyrim the entire day without ever leaving the house. So she invited me to go out with her and her friends. Very nice people. Because of this, we started talking and relating a lot more during her stay here. Heck, she also taught me how to make kick-ass sandwiches for lunch. The day she left was a sad day, because our friendship had grown so much. Her and I still actively keep in touch, even though she came here over a year ago. I will never forget her. I'm sort of curious about these kick-ass sandwiches you speak of. Tell me more. They left me a copy of the pee they filmed in my hot tub. You've been visited by luckiest pig in the world. Comment lucky piggy below to get some of his luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.